Hello everyone, welcome back for another edition of Virtual Teen Yoga. I'm your instructor Mike. Happy to have you watching this practice. And what we're going to be doing tonight, this is a yoga practice designed for beginners. So if you've never done yoga, this is probably one that you want to start with. And with this practice, I want to start you off with a couple of gentle stretches for the hips and for the spine. And the reason why I suggest starting with this, just loosening up the hips and spine, is so essential for us before we start getting into anything too dynamic. You don't want to just throw yourself right into, they call it Ashtanga yoga, which is a lot of like flows, like upward dog, sun salutes kinds of things, downward dogs. Sometimes practices like that can be very advanced and it can be a little overwhelming. But for some people, especially if you're not familiar with it, might accidentally injure yourself. But I want to go over some ways to loosen up your hips and spine. I want to cover some things about what's a therapeutic kind of pain and what's not a therapeutic pain. A lot of people say this expression of no pain, no gain. I absolutely hate that expression because it does not clearly define what's therapeutic and what can give you the gain, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, as well as go over a few stretches for the hips and for the spine. But before we get started, a few things that you may want to have with you. Sometimes you just want to have a yoga mat to lay on, unless you're on your carpet, in which case you might not worry about it unless it's kind of like a dirty carpet, in which case, yeah, definitely go ahead and get a yoga mat or maybe just a blanket. Blankets are always great too. In fact, a blanket could just be a good prop for you in general. Blankets, pillows if you got them, if they're nearby. Yoga blocks are awesome too, yoga straps, hand towels, any kind of prop that you feel like you might need, go ahead and grab it. Pause this video, and once you have it, then go ahead, unpause it, and resume this practice. But when you're ready, we'll start this in a comfortable position. That could be just laying on your back, or it could be sitting upright if you feel like you want to start this off with a little bit of meditation with an upright position. Either way, it's wherever you're most comfortable, go there, and then close your eyes. There's nothing to see at this point, but more to feel and pay attention to. And I want you to focus on your breath by breathing low in your belly, low in your diaphragm. If this is the first time you've ever done this kind of breathing technique or any yoga class, place a hand on your stomach. Put it below your belly button. And when you take an inhale, I want you to feel that stomach expand. And when you take the exhale, I want you to feel it contract. This is called belly breathing. And this is the technique I recommend for the practice just because it's a slower paced practice and we want to slow the body down. So breathing low in your diaphragm is going to be the key for that. And what we're doing, again, a beginner's class for teens. This is going to be what we usually call yin yoga. Yin yoga is a very gentle, passive style of yoga where you hold stretches for a while to stretch not only your muscles, but something that's called your connective tissues. And that's your deeper tissue that actually hold the muscles, the bones, and your organs in place and in line. Really important thing to work. Just a lot of us are unfamiliar with it. But how we do it is by holding poses for a while. Now, today we'll probably hold these poses for about 2 minutes. Again, beginner's class, I don't want you to throw yourself into anything too deep. Just give yourself that little test, the little teaser, and then we'll expand as we go on in our practice. And again, maybe not today, but maybe this is something that you continue on regularly. But with this practice, and with every practice that I ever teach, I want you to let experience be your guide. That means let your body tell you what you need to do. So really listen to it. Really, really try to respect it when you're doing this practice, especially if this is your first time. Don't overdo anything. I would rather you under stretch than over stretch, because if you over, you're likely to pull something, right? And I want you to do that. I want you to under stretch so you can keep coming back to practice. But again, let experience be your guide. Let your body tell you what you need. And if you need some assistance, listen up to modifications that I will make and suggest. There's a lot of different variations of these poses that we can do to help make it a little bit better for you as the individual. When you're ready, you go ahead and open your eyes. And we're going to start this off loosening up the hips and spine very gently. I want you to lay on your back if you're not already there. Bring your knees up to the chest. And I want you to just kind of rock side to side here. A little bit of up and down action, making circles, just using your intuition here to help wake up the hips and wake up the spine. If you can crack your back, go for it. If you didn't know it, cracking can be a really, really therapeutic thing for you. And that's actually how chiropractors make a living. They crack your back, right? They crack your joints in certain ways that are really difficult. But you'd be amazed at how many times and how many different ways you can crack your body in a yoga practice, or at least start to loosen it up so that it can be cracked by you. So we're going to start this one off with a forward bend. Inner thighs are what we're going to begin with, and the back with a butterfly pose. This is where you have the soles of the feet brought together in front of you, and you fall in round in the pose as best as you can. You know, with being a beginner, don't feel obligated to get your head down to the feet, right? If you try to force your head all the way down to your feet, you're probably going to overdo this one. So when you're doing this kind of practice, I would rather you just let gravity do the work, right? Just kind of let your body fall into it naturally without making too much or if any effort for that matter. But when you're doing this, if you're saying, you know what, I don't actually really feel this. I don't feel my inner thighs stretching that much. I don't really feel my back. I feel it kind of like more in my knee, or I feel it more in one of my hip joints on the back side or the front side, right? It could be anywhere. If it feels like it's localized, this is just a sign you are overstretching, in which case I would recommend doing what's called Dragonfly Pose. In a Dragonfly Pose, you spread your legs, you lean forward, you can get your inner thighs. You can stretch your back and get a bonus hamstring stretch. This isn't better or worse though, it's just a different pose, right? Some people are just going to prefer this because it's more comfortable for their joints, and ultimately that's what we're looking for here, right? I don't want you to overdo anything. I'd rather you under stretch than over, right? I just mentioned that. Again, breathe into it. Don't worry about how far you go. With every practice that you do, not just yoga, any practice you do, you got to start from scratch, right? The first step of being really good at something is being really bad at something. But the more you do it, the better you get, right? So if we discipline ourselves and we're doing this habitually, we're going to notice the improvement. Especially with this practice, it's tangible, it is visual. You can see these differences. The more you do this, the more flexible you become. But don't worry about rushing towards mastery. Yoga is a practice you will be doing, hopefully be doing, for the rest of your life. It's just something that we are always going to need because we're always changing. Our bodies are always changing. And we have to go with those changes, and having some kind of exercise makes that transition easier. Now when you're ready, no rush, no hurry, use your hands, slowly push out. I want you to lean back or lay down, just wherever you're most comfortable. Right, but go there for a moment, just relax. Take a breather here. We're going to stretch our hamstrings next. We're going to do what's called caterpillar pose, and I'll show you from the side view, and then I'll show you from a head-on view. But with caterpillar pose, you're going to have both legs out in front of you, and you're going to lean forward into it. And the stretch is supposed to take place in your back and the back of the legs. Again, real gentle here. You may be someone like me who, when they first started off, was very tight in the hamstrings. When I first started, I could not touch my toes. Here, right? It took a while. It actually took me a couple of months really even get to this point. So if that's you, don't worry about it. Just grab something comfortable like your knees to start this, or your shins, your ankles. If you can grab the feet and toes, that's awesome. If not though, don't worry about it because it is not a toe touching competition. So with that in mind, finding that comfortable position. Here's where a towel could also come into play too. You know, sometimes you're going to want to take a towel and just kind of like throw it over your feet. Use that for leverage to help pull you forward. Just try not to pull back with it. We want to bend forward, right? Pulling back might give you a hamstring stretch, but it's going to negate the forward bend, which is half the reason why you're doing it. Everybody needs to stretch your back, by the way. You're going to have back pain at some point. I'm telling you right now, just listen up, because at some point, you know, they said the latest statistic I read was 4 out of 5 Americans will deal with debilitating back pain at some point in their life. And this is out of a study of like 10,000 people. So 8,000 people have had or are having debilitating back pain. It's almost physically impossible to avoid. And the reason being is because we sit a lot. It's one of the worst things that you can do. One of the worst things you can do for your back is constantly sit, and especially sitting in places where you can't sit upright. If you're slouching a lot. I know I always hated it whenever my teachers would tell me, you know, and be a stickler about like posture and standing up straight, but you know, whether they knew it or not, they were right. Posture is so essential to make sure that your back stays healthy. Because if we're constantly slouching in our chairs, especially when we get home, you know, we're going to sit down, we're going to watch television for a while, right? Your back's going to suffer from it. And in fact, let me just take you through the typical American day. And you first start off just waking up, right? You hit that alarm, you hit the snooze, I'm gonna lay down for like 10 more minutes, right? You get up, what's the first thing that you do? Usually it's go sit down, right? For me, I'll get up and I'll drink coffee and then I'll sit, right? I'm guilty of it too, but it happens. So you sit, right? And then you're gonna go to either school or you're gonna go to your work. And what are you gonna do there most likely? If you're at school, you're gonna be sitting. If you work a desk job, you're sitting. And imagine doing this for 8 hours a day until you get to lunch. And even then, when you're at lunch, you're sitting, right? You get back to class, you sit down, you get back to your car, you sit, you get home, and you are just so tired from your day. What do? You sit, right? And for most people, that's all they do their entire lives. Years and years and years go by. And then their backs fall apart, and they wonder why. Right? So having yin stretches like this to make sure your back stays healthy is so critical for you. So do your best to prevent the back issues before they become an issue. When you're ready, real slow, there's time. Use your hands, push up, lean back, lay down. Take the time on that one. Short breather. And you may just want to lay down. You know, lay flat on your back, that's fine. Or if you want to keep your knees bent, if you're on the floor, that's fine too. The next area we're going to stretch, it's called your IT band. Iliotibial band is the anatomic term for it, but let's just keep it simple and call it the IT band. It runs from hip to knee on the outside of your leg. Whatever leg you're going to stretch and start on, it will be the outside. But if you start feeling like knee pain or any hip pain, anything that's right around the joint, listen up to the modifications that I'll give. A lot of times they'll work around it. But actually this pose that I'm going to suggest often won't flare up the knee or hip. Now, not always, but like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be fine for you. And it's called Eye of the Needle. And you're going to use a little bit of muscular effort with this particular pose. So you're going to lay on your back here. Let's first just start off laying back with the knees bent and feet on the floor. The next step here, let's do it on the same page. We'll cross our left leg over, right? The outside of your left leg, this is going to be the one that gets a stretch. It's going to be nice and broad here. Now you have to use a little muscular effort. So you're going to take one hand, your left hand, it's going to go through that little hole in your legs, what they call threading the needle, right? It's going to grab the right shin. The right hand is going to wrap around as well and grab that right shin. I usually will just kind of lace my fingers together like I'm in a prayer form here. That's because it makes it a little easier for me. But here's the pose. So with it, the more you pull on the shin, the right shin, the more IT band stretch you're going to get for the left leg. So if it's not enough, you just keep pulling. But if it's too much, you just start to let it go a little bit. One of the reasons why I enjoy doing this particular pose, and really all poses that have muscular effort, you control the stretch more. If you were a new student, I'm going to usually show you muscular-based poses because if it's too much, it's easy to get out of, right? This is easy to let go. You're out of the pose, right? And if it's not enough, you just keep pulling, right? You have ultimately more control over the stretch itself. Let's go ahead and breathe here for a little bit. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths and say if you're ready. There's times real slow, let that leg out, place it down, take a moment. Short breather here, just all to yourself. Other side, know if you're ready. And if you're on the same page as me, you're laying on your back, knees bent, feet on the floor, you'll cross your right leg over now. So your right leg is going to be the one that gets the stretch. Nice here, right on the outside. Any knee pain or hip pain, just let me, I'm so conditioned to say let me know. If that's what you're feeling, again, listen up to some modifications. A lot of times you'll work around it. But again, this is usually a pose where you don't feel that so much because you have more control over it, like we had mentioned. So you'll take your right hand, thread the needle, little hole there. Left hand wraps around, grab the shin. And the more you pull on your left shin, the more IT band stretch you will get on the outside of the right leg. So again, muscular effort is required. If it's not enough, keep pulling. Too much, let it go. And you're right out of the pose. And that is the beauty of using muscular effort. And again, I always will show a new student this, just for safety reasons, right? I don't want to throw you into anything too deep and then accidentally hurt you, and then you blame me, and then you never do yoga again. And I hope that never happens. Knock on wood. I've never had that happen before, but that was a first time for everything, right? But as long as we're smart about our practice, we're not going to hurt ourselves. As long as we're conscientious about what our body's going through. And the thing that I want you to feel in the majority of these poses is a broad stretch, and it's called tension. Right? This is the therapeutic pain you're looking for in like 90% of your yoga poses, and it's what we can change. That is therapeutic, right? Broad stretching sensations like this. And over time, it increases flexibility. And then it gets to a certain point where you can't stretch something anymore. And it's going to come up in a couple of different ways. When you feel like you are going too far into something, it's not going to be broad anymore. If it's too much of a stretch, it's going to start feeling localized around a joint. In this, it would be the knee or the hip, right? You'd be able to circle around and say, I feel like I'm literally stretching my knee. It's going to overstretch you, guaranteed, 100%. Anything localized around any joint is overstretching. The other sign that you're going too far or just hitting the full range is called compression. Compression is when bones run into each other, two parts of the body. In this case, two parts of the body could hit each other. I might, get my knee all the way to my chest. I physically can't get this further because there's nowhere else to go, right? I've hit that point. But some people never get there. At some point they'll say, I feel like it's pinching, like right here in my hip socket. It feels like it's squeezing. And once it hits that squeezing moment where the bones hit each other, that's it. That is your full range. Knowing that and all those other pains will prevent you from overextension injuries. And when you're ready, there's your time. Just let that leg out real slow. Kept it there a little longer on this side than the other. That's okay. Just breathe here for a moment. We're going to keep it nice for the back here and do a back bend. And this will be probably the only back bend that we do for this practice. But this is called the Sphinx Pose. If you're a regular and you've been doing this for a while, you already know what's up. But if you're not sure, lay on your stomach, prop up on the forearms and the elbows in this pose. It should just be this dull pressure right here. And we're actually getting to compression. Now we're feeling our vertebrae squeeze into each other. This is where it's therapeutic. We're doing it in a slow and static way, which means we're just going to hang out here for a while. This could hurt you if you were doing it with rhythm and repetition. So think about this. You're doing back bends like this with rhythm and repetition, meaning you're just doing it over and over and over and over again. What happens to two hard surfaces when they hit each other for too long? They wear down, they chip away. And this is actually probably the most common back injury to take place. It's just from over compression, bones hitting each other over and over and over again. And even when it's not just repeatedly done with rhythm and repetition, if you're sitting down, you're compressing your back. In fact, just to give you a little bit of math, you're compressing your back 4 times the amount when you sit as opposed to standing. So think about it. You're sitting for hours on end. We just talked about the typical American day. You're sitting for sometimes 16 hours a day. And you do this for 40, 50, 60 years. And all that compression, all the times those bones have squeezed into each other, they wear down too. So again, this is why back issues happen. So things like this can help prevent it. But this is only therapeutic when it's done in moderation with a certain amount of time and in a slow static posture. That's the big difference here. When you're ready, it's your time. Just go slow. Go ahead and lay down. Take your time here. It's going to feel like a long way away, so just hang out for a moment. At some point, though, it's going to feel really nice to do a gentle forward bend. You know, something like a child's pose. If you're not familiar with it, this is the pose. Usually, this is the #1 go-to pose after a back bend like that. We're going to do 2 more things. We're going to stretch our quads, which are the upper thighs, and we'll do a twist, and then we'll end this practice. We're going to do the quads both at the same time. This pose is called the bow pose, but I'll also show what's called the saddle pose. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. But I'll start with the bow, where you lay on your stomach, and you grab your feet, and you pull right here. The more you pull, the more you get muscular effort required, right? Now, if you can't grab your feet, here's where a prop comes in. Like if you have that towel, you can loop the towel over your ankles and just pull on that, right? You actually have to grab something though. But that's the bow pose. The other one, this is called the saddle pose, and this is going to depend entirely up to you. But you can start it off in this simple way. You're sitting on your feet and just leaning back to your hands, and you'll feel your upper thighs. Stretch right. This is the target area for this particular one. And if you feel like you need more, you can keep going back. Elbows would be next, and laying on your back would be the full range. I'm teaching this, so I want to keep myself upright, but I mean, if you want to lay down all the way here, by all means, go for it. The thing that you always have to be concerned about, though, is how do your knees feel? Do you feel any inside or outside of the knee pain? And that's coming back to the overstretching side of this. So if you're feeling that, you're overdoing it, please don't push through it. You know, I'm not with you to guide you through this, so you really, really, really have to be mindful. And I hope you're learning what is a therapeutic pain and what's not. Therapeutic pains, we know, are broad. You can wave your hand to it. Not therapeutic is localized in a joint or when you feel bones squeeze into each other. And typically, compression can hurt you. But we have mentioned the ways that make it that you can do it in a safe way, which is just slow and static postures in moderation. But this is again why I hate the expression, I mentioned this in the beginning, of no pain, no gain. I hate it. It doesn't clearly define what is pain. You know, pain is just, it's soreness, right? Well, yeah, I'm feeling it in my knee. I must be really tight there, and then I push through it and I hurt myself, right? And it happens all the time, right? Because people don't know what that is. They just think, oh, I must be tight in this area, so I should keep doing this. Or I must be weak in this area, I should keep doing this. And it's not therapeutic at all. It's gonna hurt you, right? So this is why I start people off, beginners off, with increasing flexibility first. Get everything loose, and then let's get into some strengthening. But we just have to work our way into it, right? Don't overdo it. It's okay. In fact, I would rather you give like 60 to 70% effort in this. You know, so in that way, you're guaranteed to not overdo it, but still get an effective practice. When you're ready, there's time. If you're in a saddle pose, you're probably going to want to come up to a child's pose. If you're in a bow pose, you let the legs go. And I mentioned that one with muscular effort because it is easier to get out of. A full saddle pose, sometimes you'll feel a little stuck. But if you're pretty bendy, you're probably out of it. We have one more thing left. We're gonna twist to each side for about a minute. Nothing too crazy, just enough for some like energetic balance. And with a reclining twist pose, you lay on your back, you bring your knees up to the chest, and take your legs, I'm going to the left. Here, I'm just gonna take my legs over here and lay them down, this is a pose. We're not gonna worry about any modifications. We're just gonna try to feel this broad side body stretch, even if it's very minimal here, right? Nothing too much. But like I said, only for about a minute here, so just get comfortable. When you're ready, it's time slowly unwind. Take time on out. In just under a minute there. And when you're ready, other side. Whichever side you happen to be on, just make sure it's the other one. So you're gonna lay on the back, bring the knees up to the chest, take your legs over. I'm going right. Maybe you're on the same page as me. But you'll feel the left side of the body stretching. And again, we're only going to be here for about a minute, just for that energetic balance. When you're ready, it's time to slowly unwind. Take the time on out and do whatever you need. May feel nice to lay here and cradle the legs. You may just want to do nothing, just lay flat. Take a moment though. We're at the end of our practice. And if you're ready for Shavasana, for corpse pose, go ahead and just lay on your back. Maybe lay on your side if it's more comfortable, or sit upright. But wherever you are, close your eyes. Pay attention to your breath. Breathe low in your belly, low in your diaphragm. Turn your senses, your awareness within. And for these last few minutes, just observe all that work. If this is the first time you've ever done yoga, give your body a compare and contrast, and just to see how different do I feel right now as opposed to when I first started today. No formal ending to our practice. Keep your eyes closed as long as you like. That's officially all that I have for you. I want to thank you for watching and sharing your practice with me. It's been my pleasure. Namaste.